Hello, we are going to be doing an engineering challenge today, and I'll just give you a moment that you can look over the objectives for today. So first one is looking at something called an algorithm, which you've probably heard about in math classes. It's a process for solving problems. You'll compare different design solutions, looking at the criteria and constraints that you'll be given soon. And finally, model the process of artificial selection for developing a new dog breed. Okay, here we go. What do you think all of these plants have in common? Correct answer is they are all vegetables that you can eat, and they are all the same species of plant. Probably the first one is obvious, maybe the second one not so much. Why do you think that they look so different from one another? Well, that's what we'll be looking at more today. We have seen throughout this unit how different genes can lead to different production of proteins, which leads to different traits. Usually organisms that are the same species have similar traits, but humans have come up with ways to breed these animals to have different traits. This process is known as artificial selection. Every food that you eat that was grown on a farm or raised in a ranch has been selectively bred by humans. Humans decided which traits they wanted in a plant or animal and then selectively bred the plants or animals with those traits. After many generations, these organisms can look completely different. So, to point this out, cauliflower was made by breeding mustard plants with fake flower buds together. The part of the cauliflower that you eat is the flower bud. Kale was made by breeding mustard plants with really big leaves together. Brussels sprouts were made by breeding mustard plants with fake leaf buds together. The part of the Brussels sprout that you eat is the leaf bud. So all of these are made from mustard plants combined with some other plant or organism. All dogs are also the same species. In your ISN, write a short paragraph about why you think this little black dog looks so different from the big brown dog, even though they are the same species. Both of these types of dogs were bred originally from a wolf. Humans have been selectively breeding dogs longer than they have been breeding any other organism. In this engineering challenge, you are going to come up with your own algorithm to breed a new type of dog. So what is an algorithm? An algorithm is a set of rules that are followed in a situation. For example, you use an algorithm to multiply numbers together. You can see that process playing out in front of you. You could change the numbers being multiplied and use the same algorithm to get an answer. Algorithms are also used for coding computer programs, so writing algorithms is a helpful tool for many potential jobs. People use algorithms in lots of scenarios, like driving, for example, but don't always call them algorithms. For this engineering challenge, you will be developing an algorithm to solve a problem. Okay, so here's your engineering problem. A family wants a guard dog that sounds mean, but is actually sweet because they have young kids. They cannot find a breed that fits their needs, so they want to know if it would be possible to breed a new type of dog. To answer their question, you will create your breeding algorithm and compare it to two other possible algorithms. You will see which is the best breeding method for getting the type of dog the family wants in as few generations as possible. So first step, write down that engineering problem in your notebook. With the information you have so far, what do you think the criteria and constraints are? Write them also in your notebook. You can pause this video as much as you need as you go throughout this, by the way. Now look at the physical and behavioral traits of the dogs, which are important for the kind of dog the family wants. In your notebook, write down the physical and behavioral traits you think will be important for the family's dog. The family wants a dog that has good hearing and a loud bark to be a good guard dog, but for it to actually be friendly for the kids. If the dog doesn't have all of these traits, it wouldn't be a successful solution for the family. How would you get all these different traits into one dog? As a reminder, how does a sexually reproducing organism get its traits? And I'm sure you remember that it gets it from its parents. And how many parents does a sexually reproducing organism have? I'm sure you remember it's 2. And how many alleles of each gene does each parent pass on to its offspring? 1. Each parent contributes 1 allele, so the offspring has 2 alleles, 1 from each parent. Look at the table of dog breeds shown here. This information is also shown on handouts B through D found on It's Learning. You have access to 3 dog breeds to choose from, called Breed 1, Breed 2, and Breed 3. Revise the criteria and constraints you previously wrote with new information that you have. Which are the traits you previously listed as important? Is there any breed that has all of those traits? No. You can see that it's spread across all 3 breeds, so that means you need to breed these dogs to get a dog with the traits you want. Your list of criteria and constraints might look something like this. Criteria: a guard dog that sounds mean but is actually sweet. Bred in as few generations as possible with a maximum of 5. Constraints might be each breeding can only have 2 parents, of course. You'll be developing an algorithm for how to breed these dogs. Read the 2 breeding algorithms on handout A for some examples of what your algorithm might look like. How would you come up with an algorithm yourself? Let's see what it looks like to follow a breeding algorithm. Get into your pairs and follow along. Algorithm 1 says that we need to randomly choose each of the parents used. In order to create randomness, cut out the cards on handout E. Now, for those of you doing this at home, you can just randomly select one of the cards or one of the numbers. Since there are 3 possible breeds to choose from, take out the first 3 cards and set the others aside for now. Let's say that you randomly chose the card that said Breed 1 for Parent 1. Use this table to fill in the chart for Parent 1 in your notebook. Then from your cards, you chose Breed 3 for Parent 2. On the same chart, fill in Parent 2 in your notebook. As you did in Lesson 9, use a coin toss online to determine which alleles will be passed on to the offspring of parents 1 and 2. For each trait, do a toss to see which of parent 1's alleles is passed on, and another toss to see which of parent 2's alleles is passed on. Heads is the first allele, tails is the second. I hope that you remember this from the face allele, the happy face or the monster face investigation. Let's look at the hearing trait. If you flipped a heads for parent 1, what would the offspring inherit? Capital H. If you flipped a tails for parent 2, what would the offspring inherit? Would be a lowercase h. Fill in the alleles you would get if you had the following coin tosses. You can pause and do that. Now fill in the offspring's traits based on the key. Does the offspring fit the criteria that the family wanted? No, if you do this out, you would find it doesn't have good hearing or a friendly disposition. The offspring didn't have the traits that the family wanted in their dog, but now there's a new breed to work with. Fill in the offspring's traits under Breed 4 on handout B. In your pair, repeat the process we just did until you get a dog that fits the criteria or you have done 5 generations of breeding. Don't forget to use the proper number of random breeding cards each time. In this generation, you now have 4 possible breeds to choose from. Did any pair get an offspring that fits the criteria? Do you think algorithm 1 is a good algorithm for breeding a dog that fits the criteria? Now let's try algorithm 2. If you were to follow the second algorithm on handout A, what breed would parent 1 be? The first parent would be Breed 1 because it has the most dominant alleles for hearing, bark, and disposition. If you were to follow the second algorithm on handout A, what breed would parent 2 be? Parent 2 would be Breed 2 because it has the most recessive alleles for bark and disposition. Fill in the alleles for parents 1 and 2 in your notebooks. with breed 1 as parent 1 and breed 2 as parent 2. Fill in your notebook with what alleles the offspring would inherit if you flipped the following scenario. Again, I'll give you some time. You can pause this. Then fill in which traits would occur because of these alleles. Does the offspring fit the criteria? No, it doesn't have a loud bark. Fill in the offspring's traits under breed 4 on handout C. Since we didn't get a breed that fits the family's needs, let's continue following the breeding algorithm. Refer back to algorithm 2 on handout A. For this next generation, which breed will parent 1 be? Breed 4, because this is now the second generation. So you use the offspring from the first generation as the next parent 1. Which breed will parent 2 be? It would be breed 2 because it has the most recessive alleles for bark and disposition. Fill in the parents for the next generation in your notebook. Then in your pairs, use the coin flips to determine the offspring's alleles and traits. Continue following the algorithm until you get a dog with traits that fit the criteria or until you have finished 5 generations. Do you think algorithm 1 or 2 was a better algorithm to solve a problem? Answer the questions in your notebook and come up with a breeding algorithm for the engineering challenge. Discuss your algorithm with your partner. Decide on a revised algorithm that you think will work best. Write your revised algorithm on the bottom of handout A. Go through the breeding process for your pair's algorithm. Fill out the charts in your notebook along the way. Stop if you get the offspring that fits the criteria or when you have gone through 5 generations, whichever comes first. Okay, so now after you've done that, for each pair, fill out the table with the number of generations it took for you to get a dog that satisfied the criteria with each algorithm. If the criteria was never met, just put in the number 5. Compare the numbers in each column. Which algorithm satisfied the criteria in the fewest number of generations? Why did algorithm 2 and your algorithm work better at meeting the criteria in fewer generations than randomly mating? Okay, so this is something that we would do together as a whole class. You don't have to worry about that. But something that you can do is this part here. So how might you change, or how might you make changes to your pair's algorithm to make it better? And then write that revised algorithm in your notebook. And then just a quick wrap up. Which of the algorithms was better at meeting the criteria and constraints of the problem? On average, the algorithm each group came up with should have been better at meeting the criteria and constraints because it was designed especially to solve that particular problem. How are you able to tell which algorithm was better? The best algorithms meet the criteria and constraints. So, in this case, breeding a friendly dog with a loud bark in the fewest number of generations. How does the process of artificial selection change a type of organism? Over multiple generations, artificial selection can change an organism's traits and therefore its genes. The allele combinations that an organism has after artificial selection may never have happened unless humans were involved in deciding which organisms could and could not breed with each other. Okay, humans bred dogs from wolves. They chose wolves that had friendlier personalities to breed together. How long do you think humans have been breeding nice wolves to eventually have dogs like corgis or German shepherds? Humans have been selectively breeding dogs for, they believe, 14,000 years. That's why there's so many different types of dogs with so many different traits. Okay, finally use this rubric to evaluate your work on this engineering task. Write your total score next to the chart. Okay, thank you for your work. Let me know if you have any questions.